One of the most misunderstood dynamics in dating is the idea of letting someone go, especially for women. There's this belief that holding on tighter is a sign of love, of loyalty, of effort. But ironically, it's the opposite that often creates the deepest emotional impact on a man. When a woman lets go, not in anger, not in drama, but with calm confidence, something shifts inside a man. Something that most people never talk about, but every guy who's experienced it knows exactly what I mean. Here's the truth. We chase what we feel could be lost. What feels scarce becomes more valuable. It's basic human psychology, and men are no exception. See, when a woman decides to walk away from a situation that no longer reflects her value, she's no longer trying to prove she's worthy. She's saying, if you don't see it, that's your loss. And that moment, that's when something wakes up in a man. When you're always available, always waiting, always forgiving the bare minimum, you're not making yourself more lovable. You're just making yourself easier to take for granted. But when you show that you can love someone and still let them go when they're not showing up for you, that's when a man begins to feel the weight of your absence, because your energy, your presence, your loyalty, those things weren't free. They came at a cost he didn't realize until you were gone. Letting someone go isn't about playing games or using reverse psychology. It's about recognizing your own worth in the face of someone else's indecision. When you walk away with grace, not spite, not manipulation, but with dignity, you shift the entire power dynamic. You're not trying to win him over. You're not trying to convince. You're just done. And not in a dramatic, I'm blocking you on everything kind of way, but in a peaceful, I know what I bring and I won't settle for less kind of way. That energy hits different. It's unforgettable. Men feel the difference between a woman who walks away because she's trying to teach him a lesson and a woman who walks away because she's truly at peace with letting go. The first is temporary, the second is real. And that second one, that's the woman who stays in his mind. That's the one who doesn't just leave the relationship, she leaves a mark. See, most men don't fall harder for the woman who tries harder. They fall harder for the woman who's willing to stop trying when she sees the effort isn't being matched. That's where the respect is born. That's where desire is reignited. Not because she made him jealous, not because she posted some cryptic quote on Instagram, but because she had the courage to step away from comfort in the name of self-respect. And that courage, that's rare. That's what makes her unforgettable. A woman who lets go is not saying you were never important. She's saying, I'm important too. And when a man sees that, truly sees it, it wakes something up in him that no amount of convincing ever could. Because love at its highest level isn't about proving, it's about choosing. And when she chooses herself, it either inspires him to step up or it reveals that he was never ready to begin with. Either way, she wins. She gets her peace and he gets his reality check. You might think that letting go means you lost, that you gave up too soon, that maybe if you just held on a little longer, he would have seen your worth. But sometimes the only way he can see your worth is in your absence. Sometimes your silence is louder than anything you could have said. Sometimes your decision to let go echoes longer in his heart than your efforts to stay ever did. Here's the kicker. When you let go for the right reasons, not out of ego, not to punish, but because you genuinely know you deserve more, the universe tends to respond. Maybe he comes back better. Maybe someone even better steps in. Or maybe, just maybe, you realize you never needed him to begin with. But whatever the outcome, your peace becomes your power. The man falls harder when he knows he's lost something rare. And rare isn't the woman who gives endlessly and asks for nothing. Rare is the woman who knows when enough is enough, who can love deeply but still walk away when love isn't being honored, who doesn't chase but invites, who doesn't beg but believes in herself. And trust me, that moment he realizes you're no longer checking for him, no longer waiting for the text, no longer secretly hoping. That's when he starts checking for you, not because you tricked him, but because you showed him that your love is a privilege, not a guarantee. You reminded him without saying a word that the moment he stopped choosing you was the moment you started choosing yourself. Men, that's when men fall the hardest. When a woman sets a boundary and is willing to walk away, something shifts in the way a man sees her. It's not just about the action of leaving, it's the message that action sends. It says, I'm not afraid to lose you if keeping you means losing myself. And let me tell you, that kind of inner strength leaves a lasting impression. Most people are afraid to set boundaries because they think it'll push someone away. And maybe it will. But here's the truth. Most people don't understand. The right boundary doesn't push away the right person. It filters out the wrong one. A woman who has the strength to say, this isn't good enough for me, even when it's uncomfortable, even when she wants it to work, earns a man's respect on a level that pleading or over-giving never could. When a man sees that she's not bending her standards just to keep him around, it hits differently. She's not trying to win him. She's not trying to prove her worth. She's showing him she already knows it. That's not arrogance. That's grounded, quiet confidence. And let me tell you, there is nothing more attractive than that. The truth is, a lot of women today confuse patience with tolerance. They stay in situations hoping things will change, thinking their kindness will win someone over, thinking their loyalty will make someone rise to meet their needs. But loyalty without boundaries is just self-abandonment. And over time, that chips away at your self-esteem and sends the message that you'll settle for less than what you deserve. Now contrast that with a woman who sets the standard from the start. Not in an aggressive way, not with ultimatums, but just by living in alignment with her values. If a man starts showing up inconsistently, she doesn't over-explain, she just steps back. If he's not ready to meet her where she is, she lets him go with grace. That doesn't make her cold, that makes her clear. And that clarity forces a man to evaluate what he's actually offering. He can't hide behind charm or chemistry or potential anymore, because she's not impressed by any of that unless it's backed by action. She's not flattered by crumbs. She's not seduced by inconsistency. And so, for the first time maybe in a long time, he's faced with someone who won't settle for less. Not because she's trying to play games, but because she genuinely doesn't have the energy to entertain anything that drains her peace. That's the kind of woman who changes a man. Not because she tries to, but because she doesn't try at all. She just is. She knows that love without respect is hollow. She knows that if he doesn't value her time, her presence, her energy, someone else will. And she's willing to walk away, not as a strategy, but because she's not afraid to be alone if it means being true to herself. You know what happens when a man encounters that kind of energy? At first, maybe he's surprised, maybe he even tells himself she's just trying to get a reaction. But then time passes. She doesn't chase, she doesn't check in, she doesn't remind him what he lost. She's just gone. And that's when it hits him. Because now he's not comparing her to the woman who begged or compromised. He's comparing her to silence. He's comparing her to the absence of peace he once took for granted. And suddenly, everything she stood for, the standards she upheld, the values she lived by, become clear. That kind of boundary, it doesn't just create respect, it creates reflection. He starts to realize that her silence speaks louder than anything she ever said. That her walking away wasn't a punishment, it was self-preservation. That she didn't try to convince him of her worth because she knew the right person wouldn't need convincing. And maybe for the first time, he sees her not as someone who was there for him, but as someone he was lucky to have access to. And that shift, that changes everything. Because once a man starts to see you through the lens of, I wasn't enough for her to stay, the dynamic is no longer about what you did wrong. It becomes about what he failed to recognize in time. That's the power of boundaries. Not to control someone else, but to control what you allow into your life. And when a man sees a woman walk away from what doesn't serve her, he doesn't just admire her strength. He starts to feel the weight of her absence. He starts to question his choices. And most of all, he starts to wonder if he'll ever find that kind of energy again. The kind that didn't just love him, but challenged him to be better. Not because she asked for it, but because she expected it. And expectations, backed by self-respect, they leave an imprint no one forgets. That's why men fall harder for women who let them go. You know, it's funny. People always assume that the person who walks away is the one who hurts more. They think that if someone lets you go, it means they've stopped caring. But let me tell you something about how men process emotion. It doesn't always show up in the moment. It sneaks up on them slowly, quietly, when everything's gone still. That's why, so often, men fall harder for the women who let them go. See, when a woman decides to walk away, not out of anger or revenge, but from a place of self-worth and clarity, it doesn't always hit the guy right away. At first, he might feel a sense of freedom. There's no more pressure, no more expectations. He might even tell himself he's better off. He might even go out with his friends, scroll through dating apps, convince himself that he made the right decision. But what he doesn't realize yet is that loss doesn't hit like a slap. It hits like an echo. It builds. It grows. And one day, when the noise dies down, when he's no longer distracted, he's going to feel it. He starts to think about the way she laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones. The way she listened to him when he talked about things no one else seemed to care about. He starts to notice that the women he's meeting now don't challenge him the way she did. They don't hold him accountable. They don't inspire him. He might not even be able to explain it, but something about her energy, her presence, starts to haunt the spaces she once filled. That's the thing. Men often feel the weight of losing a high-value woman after she's already gone. Because in the moment, they're not always tuned in to what they're about to lose. They're focused on the present discomfort, the argument, the misunderstanding, the fear of commitment. But when she walks away with grace, not yelling, not begging, just deciding that she deserves better, that grace stays with him. It lingers in the back of his mind. That's when the real emotional impact starts. Not during the fight, not during the goodbye, but weeks later, when he's lying in bed alone, wondering why he hasn't been able to connect with anyone else in the same way. When he checks her Instagram and sees her smiling, not waiting for him to come back, but actually glowing on her own. That's when it starts to hurt. That's when it starts to really sink in. He remembers how she used to show up for him, how she made life easier without ever making him feel like he owed her anything, how she supported his dreams, gave him space, but never let herself be invisible. He starts to realize she wasn't trying to control me, she was trying to love me. And I didn't see it. And this realization, it's devastating. Because by then, it might be too late. She's already moved forward. She's already stepped into a version of herself that doesn't need closure, doesn't need validation, and sure as hell doesn't need to chase someone who didn't see her value the first time around. And men feel that contrast deeply. The contrast between how secure, inspired, and grounded they felt when she was in their life, and the emptiness they feel without her. She becomes the benchmark for what they now realize they want, but may never find again. You know what makes this even more powerful? She didn't have to cut him down to walk away. She didn't trash him to her friends or slam the door behind her. She just looked at the situation and said, "This isn't good for me anymore." And that quiet confidence, it leaves a mark. It makes him rethink. Because when a woman lets go, it's not just the end of a relationship, it's the beginning of his emotional awakening. That's the moment he starts to realize what real connection feels like. That it's not just about attraction or comfort, it's about how someone makes you want to be better. And she did that. She brought out the version of him he didn't even know existed. And now that she's gone, he's left trying to find that version of himself again, without her. That's why men fall harder, because it takes time for them to understand what they had. It takes space, silence, and often solitude. And by the time they do, she's already free. She's already whole. She's already out there living a life that no longer includes them. And that's the moment it all hits. She was the one, and he let her go. When a woman lets go instead of clinging, she's making a statement that's louder than any argument, any plea, any last-ditch effort to make it work. She's saying, "I know who I am, and I know what I deserve." That kind of quiet confidence, it hits different. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't beg for love. It just walks away when something isn't aligned. And men feel that deeply. Maybe not right away, but they do. And that's the moment that changes everything. When a woman lets go from a place of self-respect, not bitterness, not manipulation, not punishment, but genuine clarity, something shifts in the dynamic. Because most men are used to women trying to hold on. They're used to being chased after. They're used to women accepting less than they deserve in hopes that one day, maybe, he'll change. But when a woman refuses to play that game, when she steps out of that cycle and says, "No, this doesn't work for me," without needing him to validate that decision, it disrupts the entire pattern. It shakes something awake in him. Suddenly, he's not in control of the rhythm anymore. She is. And here's the thing. When a man meets a woman with that level of grounded self-worth, she stands out, not because she tries harder, but because she doesn't try at all to make someone see her value. She simply knows it, and she lives from that place. She doesn't need to yell, "I deserve better." She just moves on and makes space for better. And that's unforgettable. Because think about it. Most people stay too long. They stay because they're afraid they won't find someone else. They stay because they've invested time. They stay because they think leaving is giving up. But a woman who can leave, not out of anger, but out of truth, that's rare. And men notice rare. They feel it when she exits their life with grace instead of resentment, with dignity instead of desperation. And they remember it because she didn't try to be chosen, she chose herself. And in that moment, she becomes powerful in a way that no amount of effort could ever replicate. Here's the part people don't talk about. When she lets him go, he might not chase her right away. He might think she'll come back. He might think she's bluffing because that's what he's used to. But when days go by, then weeks, and she still isn't reaching out, that's when it hits. That's when he realizes this wasn't a game. This wasn't a tactic. She really meant it. She really walked. And that's when the value of what he lost becomes clear. Not because she tried to prove it, but because she didn't have to. That's how men fall harder. Because her silence speaks. Her absence teaches. Her self-worth makes noise without ever saying a word. It's not easy to let someone go when you care. It's not easy to detach from a connection that felt meaningful. But it's one of the most loving things a person can do for themselves. And ironically, it's often the moment someone else begins to truly see what they had. When you know your worth, you don't chase clarity from someone who's shown you confusion. You don't beg for consistency from someone who's only offering chaos. You don't lower your standards to keep someone around. You raise your standards and see who steps up or who steps aside. And when you let someone go, not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving yourself more, you shift from being someone who waits to be chosen to someone who does the choosing. That's when everything changes. That's when he realizes you weren't waiting around to be good enough. You already were. And now he starts asking questions. Why didn't she fight for this? Why was she so okay with letting me go? Was I not important enough to her? Or did she just know she deserved more? And right there in that moment, her absence becomes louder than her presence ever was. Because when a woman leaves with quiet power, she becomes the unanswered question. And men are wired to chase answers, to solve puzzles, to figure out what they don't understand. The more emotionally composed and self-possessed she is in that moment, the more he starts to feel the imbalance. He thought he had the upper hand. He thought he could come and go, but suddenly she's the one with all the emotional control. And it makes her unfair. And it's not about playing games. It's not manipulation. It's about alignment. She's not walking away to get a reaction. She's walking away because she doesn't need one. She knows what she's worth. She knows what she wants. And if he's not showing up in that space, she has the courage to step out of it. That kind of clarity, that kind of self-respect, it creates intrigue. Because it's rare. It's not what most people do. Most people cling to what's fading, hoping to revive it. But when she lets it go, when she lets him go, she becomes the woman he didn't get to keep and didn't know how much he wanted until she was gone. It might not happen overnight. At first, he might feel a sense of freedom, like he dodged something, like it wasn't a big deal. But slowly, reality starts to shift. Days pass, weeks maybe, and then something small, her favorite song, a message she used to send, the way she laughed, creeps in. That emotional space she used to fill, it's empty now, and it doesn't feel as good as he thought it would. He starts replaying the moments in his head, the way she looked at him when she was present, the way she cared without needing to control, the way she listened when no one else did, and the way she simply walked away when she realized he wasn't showing up for her. And that mystery, that question of how could she just let go so easily, doesn't leave him, because deep down, he knows it wasn't easy. He knows it took strength. He knows she chose to let him go, not because she stopped caring, but because she started caring more about herself. That flips the narrative. Suddenly, she's no longer the one he walked away from. She's the one who chose herself over him. And that truth, that power, echoes louder than anything she could have said in the moment. You see, when someone leaves with bitterness or emotional chaos, it's easy to dismiss. She was angry. She was hurt. It gives him a reason not to reflect. But when she leaves with peace, with grace, with no emotional outburst, no last plea, no need for closure, it becomes impossible to ignore. It forces him to sit with the silence, to feel the consequences. And that's where desire gets rebuilt, in the quiet, in the space where she once stood. And maybe he'll try to come back. Maybe he'll test the waters, wondering if she'll respond the same way she used to. But she won't, because she's already evolved beyond that version of herself. She didn't walk away as a tactic. She walked away as a decision. And when she does that, when she actually means it, it marks her in his memory in a way that never fades. She becomes the one he couldn't crack, the one he couldn't break, the one who didn't crumble in his absence, but instead rose in her own presence. And no matter who comes after her, no matter how many connections he has, there will always be that lingering question, what if I'd shown up for her the way she deserved? That question, that unshakable what if, that's why he falls harder. Because she became a mystery he never solved, an energy he can't replace, and the woman he remembers not for what she gave, but for what she refused to accept. And that is the impact of letting go with strength.